Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Lorena Creole, and with me this evening, I have Rrr of Positive Fandom and Enzo of Biggaford Entertainment. How are you all doing this evening?
Doing good. How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing.
So glad to be here tonight with both of you to talk about this fantastic show.
Oh my God, yes. So, for those of you who do not know, and I don't understand how you don't, because both movies were box office successes.
Yep.
And what we are talking about actually is the new streaming series on Peacock, The Best Man, The Final Chapters. Now, if you have seen the movies, you already know what you had to look forward to
Hmm.
with this series. And I want to give a big ups to Anzo for reminding me about this series, because it popped up on my Fire TV, and the first thing I did was I said put it on the playlist, to click that, and got busy with the holidays and forgot about it. So when Anza posted on Twitter, like, okay, have any of y'all seen this show? I'm like, oh shoot, thank you for reminding me. I had to go back and watched it. And I think I lost like 8 hours and didn't care because it was that good.
Hmm. And I have to give big up to Danny in the chat, Mr. Comment Chat, because he was the one that told me. He was like, "Hey man, are you watching The Best Man, the Final Chapters?" And I was like, "Oh, it's out already? Okay, let me check it out." And I was hooked. I was like, "Yo, this is fire."
Man, I tell you, what about you? Because I think I had told you about it.
Yeah, Lorena, I wouldn't be watching this show if you had not mentioned it. I didn't even know it existed. And of course, everybody loved The Best Man, the original film. I guess it was 1999. And of course,
Yes.
the follow up holiday film from 2013. But Lorena, I had no idea we were going to get this level of quality in a series, so many episodes, and each one is better than the next. It's just been fabulous. And I have to give them a lot of credit for doing something that's just so extraordinary, especially in this day and age where we're not getting extraordinary work out there, are we?
Absolutely. And you see it's a full black cast and they did each character properly. It was just well done. It was good to see. And that's why I posted it on Twitter, because after I watched it, I'm like, yo, is anybody watching this? Like, you guys got to watch this movie, this series. It was really good, man. So I just wanted to put it out there for people who haven't seen it, because I think it deserved whatever ratings or people watching it, what it should get. So.
It sure has. And speaking of that point, just to reiterate what Anzo's been saying, and pretty much what has been co-signing on, from Variety, The Best Man, The Final Chapters is the first Peacock original to land on Nielsen series streaming top 10.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
is how good this is. And just in case people are like, well, what do you mean it's on the Nielsen top 10? This Nielsen top 10 is what we're talking about right here.
Yes.
Okay. You see where it is, right?
Wow.
Right below a Netflix one. Well, Harry and Meghan, we don't really freaking care about them. Really don't. But this is a heavy hitter, list. I mean, Jack
Mhm.
Ryan is only like about what, like 4 slots above it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, and it deserves to be there. Like, I'll just say, it deserves to be there. It's well written. The stories and episodes are great. Like, it keeps you wanting more. After one episode ends, you're like, okay, I got to watch the next one. And then that one ends, I got to watch the next one. And the characters had a lot of growth in it as well, too. And I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely. And, one or two of the things on this list are reality shows. So, it's not really sort of content that's written out and created, for entertainment value the same way that a series like this is made. Certainly, it was not easy to make this because they had to consider the characters through the years, through the decades.
Mhm.
There were no missteps. everything in this felt right. I can't get over how fantastic it is.
I
Uh,
agree.
likewise. I mean, I've watched it. I want to say this is my second time. Actually, just finished my second time watching it, and from the first episode, it picks up right where the Best Man Holiday left off,
Hmm.
and boom, everything is still familiar yet different. And what you're treated to is some of the best television, best written television that I've had a chance to sit down and watch in a very, very, very long time. So, folks, we are going to give our, I guess we kind of did kind of give our spoiler free, but we'll go through and do it again. But I want to welcome some of you folks here who have dropped in to hang out with us. Just to warn you, we will eventually be talking spoilers about the show, just to kind of let you know. Let's see. Oh, I know who this is. This is Matt G. Like, oh my God. Good seeing you, Matt G. Good seeing you. Good seeing you, Danny, in Comics Chat. What up? How you doing, my dear? Glad you're out there. Dylan C is there saying hi. Says, hey, Lorena. Hey, Biggaford. And so good to see you. And Chef Nation says, good evening, beautiful people. My mom just finished this and loved it.
Hmm.
Not a surprise there.
At
Mhm.
all.
Not at all. Punk Trace is here saying hi to all of us. Hi, Lorena and Biggaford. How you doing? The Nice Gamer, I see you. Says, hail, Lorena, panel, and chat. Hello, hello.
So,
And Stunt Brat is here as well. This is Miss Lorena Hugs. Saying good to see you. Good to see you. All right, folks. I see you guys start to filter in. So before we get to spoiler talk, and I know we've kind of talked in general.
hmm.
So I'll say to get a little bit more specific, but without spoilers, which episode stood out to you the most?
Ooh,
Oh,
good
oh.
question. Go ahead. You first.
Well, I have to say, it was maybe the one. Well, maybe there was two that stood out. Would be the I don't even know which episode it falls into, but it's the one. There's a let's say an event where there's a wedding. So I think it's episode two. I think where
Hmm.
that happens. And episode the New Year's Eve party episode, the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So those are the two definitely. It's kind of hard to pick because they're all so good as well, but those are the two I would pick.
I agree with you because the wedding part, when it was happening, I was like, come on, dude. I was like, yes. I was cheering for that scene. And then the New Year's part, I was like, oh man, come on, bro. You know what I mean? So you got two different types of emotions. I loved both parts in the series. Those were my highlights as well.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. For me, the New Year's one, that one with just the way that they wrote it
Hmm.
and the running joke. If you haven't seen the original Best Man, too bad. I'm gonna give you the spoiler. Um, apparently, Merc has a problem keeping his mouth shut, and everybody knows that he does. Okay.
Hmm.
So that's kind of like the thing that's floating around for the New Year's episode. But what eventually wound up happening, how they played that out, I mean, it was brilliant. It was
Absolutely.
absolutely brilliant, and like the best combination between just like humor, absolute embarrassment, shot everything, and just
Hmm.
how it happened. So I like that one. And I'd have to say the episode before the last one, because I'm one of those persons who loves it when just everything starts to hit the fan and the
Hmm.
characters start, just doing stuff that you know it's lurking down below the surface, but they've kind of been
Yeah.
keeping it locked down. But no, everybody's filter was off and
Hmm.
everything just flying till people say some stuff they can't quite take back. So I thought that was written extremely well
I
too.
agree. And Terrence Howard had that line there, right?
Right.
Yes.
I was dying. I was dying.
Oh man. Comic Chat said the one where Shelby and Terrence Howard characters profess their love. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Let, let me say, I think they were the best two characters in the whole series. I really enjoyed their characters because if you remember from the first two where they were and where they ended up getting to, it was like such a great progression. I was cheering for them all the way. So,
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed their relationship a lot. I think that it was quite uncertain in the beginning as to what was going to play out. It didn't
hmm
feel like that was it was set in stone, so to speak. But we find out some things about why there may have been barriers to that throughout the entire story, and it is incredibly satisfying to see where they were, where they started off and where they end up.
absolutely.
Yeah. They've been my favorite couple that weren't together and then eventually got together because Shelby is just nuts.
Yeah.
He is absolutely nuts. I love that she's nuts. I love that they kept her, not only kept her being nuts in the first episode, but stepped that sucker up to a whole different level.
Yeah, they did. And we'll get into some of that when we get into
Yes.
the spoiler part. But yeah, she did.
Uh-huh.
Can't wait for this. This is going to be just so much fun to talk about because honestly, there was a lot of sort of there was a lot of emotional moments in this, but a lot of fun in it too. I think
Mhm,
that the way that it was presented, there were certain things where you could have a laugh at some moments where characters were uncertain, and maybe I'm not everybody, but I found myself in some situations where you're like, now what do I do? This kind of wondering, how am I going to respond to this for situations that you're not expecting, especially.
yeah,
And it was just done so beautifully in this series.
It
I agree.
really was. And we'll get into it with the spoilers, but I love how when they bring the characters up that we remember, they not only give you that nostalgic feeling about who that character is, but then they throw something in there to
hmm
catch you up to present day. It's just masterful how they wrote it, and I think that's why that first episode, which we're going to talk about, hooks you so
I
darn
agree.
quickly. Absolutely. So, folks, we are going to be getting into spoiler talk for The Best Man, the final chapter. So, if you do not want to hear spoilers about this show, when I really like a show, I would be mad if somebody spoiled it for me. So, I'm trying to give you guys plenty of warning because
hmm
we are literally about to start throwing spoilers in. Three, two, and one. All right. So let's start with episode number one, Paradise.
Yes.
To back it up a little bit, when episode one opens, what they do is they kind of catch you up from what happened in the 1999 movie
hmm
to the 2013 movie, Best Man Holiday. So they did a very good job of giving you an idea of just who the characters are, what's happened to them, and the point where we start, which is when we left off of the Best Man Holiday. Quentin, of all people, is getting married
hmm
and wants Harper to be his best man
hmm
and makes that joke, right?
Yeah.
You didn't see him, did you?
Yeah. And then you have what's the other one's name? Who was jealous that he was the best man?
Hurt,
Oh, merch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hurt, merch.
Merch.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And through the whole episode, he's just using these sarcastic remarks about, oh, why is he the best man? I should, you know what I mean? It was funny. It was well done. You know.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, certainly they start off the episode with a bang, and they didn't have to do that recap for us. It was a courtesy, and even I
Mhm.
saw things that I had, had forgotten because I didn't watch The Best Man, nor did I watch Best Man Holiday right before I started to watch the final chapters. I just went right into it, and I realized I said, they really have to do a continuation here because this was such a popular, original movie and sequel. It was needed to be placed here. And,
Mhm.
it was nice to see time passing by. These characters are very real. They don't feel like they're made up or anything like that. These are your friends, people you know. I live in New York. I know people like this. This feels very familiar, seeing how so many of these characters are going on with their lives. And it's so good to see it. Shelby's a real housewife. Of course she is. Lorraine and I,
Mhm.
you and I were talking about this. Of course she is.
Of course
And
she is.
and it's just so beautifully done. She knows, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but she knows the ratings will go up. That reaction that she had, it was shock. It was pure 100% shock. I don't believe that she even knew what she was doing at the time. And we've had friends, fortunately, if you're around somebody, you can say, no, 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 you shouldn't go over there. We don't want you showing up here. And of course, she kind of breaks all the rules, but I think she does it with style. She knows she's on camera. She knows people are seeing her. I think it's a very unique situation. She kind of has a laugh at herself a little bit, and I think that shows you in this especially in the series that they're adults and they can handle these situations. But yes, she was shaken to her core, and
Mhm.
there was pretty much, it felt like she was pretty much powerless to do anything, at all in regards to this. She kind of she's missing the love of her life. What is going to happen? It felt wrong. Why was this happening? A lot of people are trying to figure out why. Um, Quentin was even in this situation, but it's a destination wedding, and who doesn't love a destination wedding where you get to go into the beautiful, I'm guessing it might be the Caribbean somewhere. It could have been Florida, or wherever it is, but
Almost like
it's someplace
Caribbean.
lovely. And something, it's a time for everybody to cut loose. And sparks were gonna fly. But just such a beautiful way to start out something with a celebration. It's paradise. It's everybody should be, celebrating here. And it felt like a celebration. It felt like you were going to a destination wedding of a friend's. It was just remarkable how they did this.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Especially like Merch and Candace, their relationship, considering she, first of all, the fact that she used to be a stripper. Now, one of the things that
Mhm.
I didn't like is about when their kids basically like, oh, when you were a stripper, I'm like, okay, if I would have talked to my mom like that, I would not have been living anymore.
I
Okay.
agree. Mhm.
I'm like, no, that's just not gonna work. But
Well,
very
it's
realistic for them. Oh, so go ahead, my dear.
Well, something, Lorena, you make a good point. And what we are seeing is kind of the newer generation of children. It's not the case for everyone, but they have access to more information now, much more than when we were growing up. They have stuff at their fingertips. They can ask Siri at a moment's notice. And I'm sure, they've heard the stories about how dad met mom. And, it's stuff of legends. It's an incredible story. I mean, I think it's a great story. And of course, the parents love each other. You can tell how much they are still in love with one another. He's just absolutely fascinated by her, and she just loves him so much. This is something. It's one of the best love stories in the show, I think. Um,
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned. Um,
Hmm.
yes, that's a good point. But they had to give him something in the story where he could show he was somewhat powerful physically or some way
Mhm.
show, and also something for him to, there's meditation involved in a lot of these martial arts too. So, perhaps he does that as well. But I just think you're right, Lorena. That comment with the kids at the table and everything's out in the open, it can be uncomfortable, but it seems like the parents handled it like pros.
Yeah, they
And
did
I
because
was
it's just like you're in public, you know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andre.
mhm. Yeah, and I was also gonna say the daughter suffers from like anxiety and stuff too, right? So they might
Hmm.
not want to make a big scene in public, so they just let it go. You know what I mean? So yeah, it could have been that too. But I agree. Like any normal situation, we're like, "What did you just say?" You know what I mean? Really?
You know who you're
Okay.
talking to like that?
Yeah, exactly.
But since this is Hollywood, they just the way that they wrote it and the way that they rolled with it was like hilarious
Yeah,
because they're just
yeah.
like, what's sex? Well, it's kind of like a really good dessert. Oh, okay, I want lots of
Yes,
sex.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was well done. Like everything about the first episode was really great, and it hooks you, from the start. I only had one little issue with it, and I thought there was a storyline that didn't really go anywhere, and it
Hmm.
was the one with Nia Long and the guy there, where it looked like they were gonna have some kind of relationship, and then it just didn't end up going anywhere. But all that stuff was funny too, though.
I
The
Oh,
way he
I
was trying to
peyote.
court her.
I
Yeah.
think I know why it didn't go anywhere. And it's
Mhm.
because he wanted to marry her. I think he wanted more than just a fling. And he told her, "Look, you're a beautiful woman and you're what I want. I don't want to let you go and just be friends or have a fling. I don't want that. I
Mhm.
want something more." She's like, "Hold up, you know how she is. Hold up a second. I can't go for that right now. I don't even know you." So I think that's what happened. I could be wrong, but I have this feeling that that's the case. He doesn't look like he sleeps around. He's a proud man, but he wants something more from her. And I think it gives her credit that where she knew she couldn't commit to that. She's not going to just sleep with this guy and then brush him off and say, "I'm not going to see you, until whenever." That
Mhm.
would be very, like a bad situation to do to a guy who maybe wanted a little bit more from her. And he looked like kind of a nice person, and very
Mhm.
attractive. He's not a playa, so to speak. I think he was
Yeah,
a,
he was.
a
Mhm.
decent man
I
who,
agree with you on that. Yeah.
yeah. So it was great to see stuff like that. It's great to see that they had some nice banter, and
Mhm.
he ended up kind of being a guru. And thank goodness. And Lorena, you and I were talking about this. I was so glad that they, yes, she was. I'm so glad that they spared us, certain things in this first episode. Like, when you take that hour that product,
Hmm.
we didn't have to see what happens next because we know what happens next. We
Yeah,
just got
Mhm. Mhm.
we knew what was going to happen before it started happening, and then when it did, oh my god, that was just too funny.
yeah.
I
And I
agree.
think was wonderful. And his fiance, that actress, is, as you guys both know, she was in Boogie Nights. I think she looks wonderful. She was perfect in
Mhm.
this. Quentin, like the idea of him being a hippie, the idea of him having that approach to life, that is maybe against everything about him.
Mhm.
That's not him. He's kind of like a cigars and kind a cigar
Uh,
guy, uh,
mhm. Weed
gin or brandy.
smoker.
Yup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the thing. So I think it was very interesting. So everybody knew something was a little off, but she was so
Mhm.
lovely, and she was very captivating. And certainly, you can't take your eyes off of her because she just draws you to her. And she was the perfect person to, I guess, bolster publicity for Spy v Enterprises, which is what they wanted to do.
Mhm.
But
Hmm.
I did enjoy her thing where she kind of went up to his face and she went, and all this sort of, thing. And I said, this is just
With
such a
the
great
sage.
show.
Mhm.
Nobody's allergic
Yeah.
to sage. I can't.
Yeah, 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 right. That was funny. He started coughing. Oh, you're allergic to it, meaning he was like the bad guy, like the devil, because Sage gets rid of
Hmm.
demons and stuff like that. So I found that funny too. And when she walked up to them and she was giving them attitude, they're like, "Well, she's like, oh, I'm just joking with you."
Yeah.
She was weird though, but to me, I was like, yeah, this is not Quentin though. You know what I mean?
That's what I was thinking. I'm just like, because that's what they kept saying. Is he okay? Did he bewitched or
Hmm.
something? Anybody else, not just me, right? See something's,
Hmm.
weird about this. And yeah, I mean that episode was written so well. It was hilarious. It was a great way to like meet the characters, that we remember, miss the one that is obviously gone because Mia is no longer there. And you see
Hmm.
Lance coping the way that Lance is gonna cope.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Lorena and Anzo, when these superstar football stars go anywhere in the world with their rings on their fingers, they are just larger than life. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
Chestnut did maybe an incredibly classy version of someone who, when you would walk in the room, everybody would notice, because a lot of times these guys are very tall, they're very big. Even the smaller ones are big. So
Mhm.
you
Mm-hmm.
notice these guys right away. And, he would be another person where you would expect to see at a resort like this, this 5-star exclusive resort. He would walk in and just own the place. So I
Right.
think
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting, the treatment. He just was incredibly smooth and classy. And, every woman is going to want to be with this man. It really was enjoyable to see, that type of victorious depiction of someone who's essentially a hero, would be a hero here in the US. We can't get enough of football players while they're playing and even after they've retired. So
Mm-hmm.
it was great to see him be relevant and be healthy as well.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the fact that they showed the pain he was going through because he still lost Maya, the love of his life, right?
Mhm.
And the way he was handling it, I'm like, yeah, that's real life. Like that's how someone would handle that. They don't want to get hurt anymore, so they would just end up going to sleep around and trying not to give their heart to anybody. And I was like, that makes sense for someone that was in a lot of pain like that. So I really enjoyed that part about his character as well.
Yeah, it was very realistic. It was, they weren't trying to sugarcoat it. You can tell just by, the way the other guys were reacting. We're just like, we know this isn't you. We know this
Mm-hmm.
is something that you're going through. We're here for you. But at the same time, it's like, bruh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Which is something you'll see throughout the whole entire show. So, moving on to the wedding episode 2. Can we
Ugh.
Mhm.
talk about the scene at the airport? Because by the end of
Yeah.
episode 1, Shelby's basically been convinced that you just need to go. You need,
Mhm.
you need to leave. And you see her like break down, kind of like in tears when she's talking to her daughter about how she's coming home. And, she realizes that she does love Quentin, but is going to do the most loving thing that she can do, which is to go on with her life. And she's resigned herself to that at the airport, kind of like, who the heck, why are you here? And he's like,
Mhm.
searching the airport, looking for her. And that whole scene where he is just like, I don't know what to do if
Mhm.
I don't know who I am if I don't have you, around.
Mhm. Yep. I was
And
cheering for it, man. I was like, "Yo, bro, get your girl, bro."
uh-huh.
You know what I mean? When he showed up there, I was like, "Yes, all right, that's what I'm talking about." Because I didn't want to see him go with the other girl, marry her, and go through all of that stuff. No, it was Shelby. You know what I mean? And I was like, "Okay, that was great. It was great." And you could see the pain, like you could see she really cared about him. Because we didn't talk about in the first episode, but when they had the bachelor party and she showed up. You know what I mean? He's like, "Oh, we got some strippers coming," and she showed up and she did her thing, and he was like
To
mesmerized.
Jodeci of all things.
Yeah,
It's important to point this out.
yeah, yep, yeah, and he was mesmerized by that, So I was like, "Yeah, I like that." And then her confrontation with his soon to be wife, that was great too. And then she left, and then he ends up going for her at the end of this episode, and I was like, yes, finally, that's what I'm talking about. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it is very interesting because obviously it's 20 years later, they still care about one another, and I'm guessing that they've been in contact with one another every now and then, from either seeing each other at parties, right? Because this is a close knit circle of friends,
Mhm.
to other events that might where their paths might cross, and so they've never been out of contact with one another. So this really has kind of sideswiped her a bit because she's surprised she didn't know about it and she would have known about it. But I have a feeling everybody didn't tell her about it on purpose They
Mhm.
kind of kept it a secret from her. And this is
Mhm.
a situation she wasn't expecting to be in. So I think that, once she kind of got herself together and found herself, as I like to say, kind of rushing in like a linebacker into that engagement party, saying, "Hello, everybody. I am
Mhm.
here," and it's kind of like everybody's like, "Oh my God, how did she get her?" Of course, she was going to find a way. She was a
Mhm.
housewife, for heaven's sake. She would find you if you were on another planet. There's no place that you could be off limits from her, but she had to figure out what she was going to do. And honestly, that striptease, one of the other characters helped her to
Yeah.
kind of do that. And I think everybody was supporting the notion of them being together, especially when they realized that maybe this engagement was a bit of a sham and there was something else behind
Mhm. Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
Real, and this girl was a little weird, she's a bit out there. Quentin was not necessarily the happiest he's ever been, and it was nice to see them kind of have that romp. And if I were that woman who was engaged to Quentin, Shelby stopped by, I certainly would not be happy seeing what's going on between the two of them. And I certainly would not be saying, well, you guys could screw every once in a while. I would never
Mhm.
say that about the man I loved. That's how I knew she didn't really love this guy. She was kind of just trying to cut the deal, make sure the deal is
Mhm.
secured. She didn't really care about Quentin, so that was maybe perhaps even more evident at the end when she says, "Well, if you hurt him, I will find you." And
Yeah.
that she just didn't really care that much about him. It's too bad because, as far as I'm concerned, I think Quentin is a catch. He may be hard to catch, but I think that he has a lot to offer a woman. He's not a mean man. He's a nice guy. And, it
Mhm.
just was wonderful to see him display that affection towards her.
Mhm.
It was like a dream come true, I think, for both of them. And, just seeing them go back to the resort, and she's the one in the wedding dress with the sun
Yeah.
behind them and the sand in the air and everybody with their, drinks with umbrellas in it. It felt so good to finally see that union come about. It felt like a miracle. So it was really good to see that finally. And we learned something that I was not expecting. Maybe you guys expected, but I did not expect it. I'm always like the person who's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that Shelby had a child with Quentin and she never told him. I mean,
Mhm.
my goodness, guys.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
if I had one I wasn't quite happy. But there was a part that I was happy about when Quentin was just like, you know what, I want to leave space for, her real dad. He's like, I do not want to disrespect her real dad. I was like, okay, that's a real one. I said, that's some
Mhm.
class right there. And she tells him, you are her real dad. I'm just like, wait, he didn't know? And they didn't really talk about that consequence.
Mhm.
And they didn't really explain it. They didn't go back and really revisit it. Well, they had a line that dropped in the episode where,
Yeah.
everything went off the rails. But I would think that there would be a bit more discussion about that. He finds out that he has a child that he didn't know about for 10 years.
I think deep down inside he knew. You know what I mean? I think deep down inside he knew, and
Hmm.
he just, got the confirmation from her. I think that's probably why there wasn't, because usually you blow up. What do you mean? I had this daughter, that's my daughter for 10 years. You didn't tell me, But I think he knew. That's why he was in her life as like the uncle. They call him uncle. So I
Hmm.
believe he
Yeah.
was in her life for that reason, because he kind of deep down knew,
Yeah.
So.
I just kind of would have liked for that point to get revisited
Hmm.
um right,
I agree.
before the last one. Yeah, cuz I overall I loved how they handled it. Loved how that worked out. And then it seemed to make complete and utter sense why Shelby basically pulled her wig off and lost her freaking mind when she found out that Quinn was getting married. It's like
Yeah.
it it sort of made sense in the beginning, but it definitely made sense by
Hmm.
the end of that episode. So I was glad to see them together, like relieved
Absolutely.
to see them together.
And when I say character growth, why I like it through the movies and the series is because when they first got together, if you remember, they woke up in the bed and they both looked at each other and screamed,
Yeah.
like, oh, what the hell, like, what did I do? They screamed, and then to see them end up getting married, I was just like, yeah, that's kind of how it goes sometimes. So I enjoyed that.
Oh man.
Absolutely. Any more thoughts on episode 2, the wedding?
Oh, the scene where the shaman did the stuff to them and they were all sitting down getting a high, and I was dying, man. That was so funny. That scene had me rolling.
Oh my God. Everybody just how they were reacting. Merch is just like going home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jordan's
Hmm.
like having some existential crisis at the same time. Shelby's about to crap herself. I mean, it
Hmm.
was just too that was fun. That
Oh,
that was
and
funny to watch.
the Morris Chestnut scene where he goes into the pool. I know you ladies like that scene,
Oh
right?
heck yeah. I must have rewound that part several times.
Now
I'm
that's how
sure.
you do a nude scene, not like what you do in Thor: Love and Thunder. If they had
Mm-mm.
had
Hmm.
a Hemsworth dive into a pool or something like that, it would have been very different. This was very sensual. It was very sexy.
Hmm.
I didn't know he was going to be nude. I had no idea. But when I realized what he was doing, you obviously have to look at this and, you remember.
How can you not?
You remember that.
And I think this episode also put in some seeds throughout the series, like Sana Lathan character. I know you guys simped on Morris Chestnut, but that's my girl right there, right?
He's
And they put
wonderful.
this, yeah, and they put the seeds in that she liked where she was and she wanted to stay there, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I liked that seed that they planted in there. And there was another one. I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me though. But yeah, I like the fact that they did that.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, I'm telling you, there's so much stuff to kind of go back to what Anzo was saying. There's, I think, another reason why this series is so good is you see so much build up and payoff throughout each episode and even throughout, the whole series. Like with what you're talking about with
Hmm.
the seeds of, with with Robin being happy where she
Hmm.
is, with her being impressed when she's in the Caribbean, and she's just like, there's just this cultural tie that's here that we don't have back home, and that's something that I would want. So you hear her talk about that.
Hmm.
All right, so then we get to episode 3, Brown Girl Dreaming. So Harper's talking about wanting to level up his life. I think this was the episode where he's signing books in the
Yeah.
Costco, the
Yeah.
like the Bumper G series. I kind of liking his character, like the writer. I used to read his books, but then they turned to trash. Eric Jerome Dickey.
Hmm.
It seemed like all he did was knock these books out, and just they just sold. That's all that people wanted. And he's just like, I want something bigger.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, and Lorraine, you and I did mention this before, and Anzo, you were not in the stream when we were talking about this, but I love what they did is that they took us through the years without telling us too many of the specific things that happened during that whole pandemic thing. We don't know
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
but we know it happened, right? We know we went through presidencies, we went through, the protests, and certainly, the pandemic, the three Ps, right?
Hmm.
But they
Hmm.
showed it to us in a way that we could understand. They took their time explaining where everybody was to where they are now. And it is interesting, Lorena, that, Harper still is at a point where he's not that happy. He's capable of maybe writing anything in the world. But what he's writing is not quite what he wants it to be. He wanted to be a Pulitzer Prize winner. And he knows deep down inside he's not going to win the Pulitzer with what he's writing. And so all this success isn't meaning as much to him as he would like it to, because he still has that dream of getting that. And however, he feels obligated, which is fine, to his family. He feels that he has to make as much money as he can to ensure that he can support them and his child. And when she, gets married, like he's thinking, maybe 40 years down the line. So that's his main motivation at this point. He's getting these offers and things, but in actuality, what's going through his mind is, I have to get enough bank. So if something happened to me tomorrow, everybody would be okay. That's his motivation.
Hmm.
Even though the stories are very good, they're very good stories, but it's not his passion piece, not his opus of what he wants to do with his career. So it is interesting. And a lot of people are in this situation and they're doing what the best they can do and put their family first. At least that's how I viewed his point, or at least where he was in his career there. So it was great to kind of see him, that he's so popular that he's at Costco, or doing book signings at a time when a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people are out of work.
Yeah. And he obviously wanted to do better, right? He wanted to, like, move his family out of to where they were, and he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be relevant with his writing, because the writing that he was doing was just like these little, romance novels or whatever. And he's like, I can do more and I can do more. And that's what he's seen and what he wanted to do. So, most people always strive for more, especially when you start to get complacent in what you're doing, which is what you see happens to him in this episode, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't blame him.
Nah, I really don't. Especially when you remember from the previous films how serious he is, about his writing. But it's like he's got, the agent in his ear who already says, "Hey, there's this movie deal. They want to turn your first book into a movie." So I forgot
Hmm.
to mention that that's pretty much what this whole season started off with, is that Harper's trying to get everyone's buy-in for the first book, which caused all the problems in the first
Right.
movie, to be turned into an actual movie. So a lot of it, it's he's getting the Hollywood money, he's getting the commercial paper, but it's not the type of writing that he wants to do, like you guys were talking about. He's not Langston Hughes, he's not Richard Wright. Those are, his idols that he wants to write. He wants something that's Pulitzer Prize worthy, but he also wants to make sure that he provides for his family. And he just thinks I just need to, I need more, and I have to try to figure out how am I going to be able to do these. And it sets up that whole conflict that will play out later on in the series.
And I love
Hmm.
hearing his agent say, "Oh yeah, it's unfinished business, back in business, open for business, close for business." Like this
Sequels, baby.
Yeah.
it felt so good. I said, "Yeah, that would be good. I'd love to see more of this." Ironically, in the story within the story, because it keeps getting better and better as you're watching this thing. Certainly, I hope that's kind of, I guess, what's happened is that open for business, closed for business are episodes 1 through 8 of this series. Certainly, it's something that was a well thought out, well written um, uh, series here. So it wasn't something that was done in a rush. Whoever did this took their time to give us this quality stuff. And I especially like Jordan, who is this incredible executive, where she
Hmm.
is, essentially doing television at a time when it's really hard to do TV. Like this is one of
Hmm.
some of the hardest years to do television, and she's making it work. And I knew I said, how long are we going to hear about Black Twitter? And sure enough, um, you know,
Woo! Black Twitter showed up in a major way. Oh,
Absolutely.
woo!
I just loved it. I said, I know what's gonna happen. She's gonna say, as soon as Shelby said that she had a million followers, I said, wait a minute, something's gonna happen. And sure enough,
Hmm.
that deal I guess that Jordan had with the other host fell through, but in a bad way. And they were like, oh, this is what happened to this person. And I heard Black Twitter. I said, yes. So it is our reality though, because I love
Hmm.
Twitter too. I think that they're really hitting a lot of marks when it comes to just how we live our modern day. Things have changed in the 20 years when we were growing up, and we were watching that when we were college students, and so
Mm-hmm.
have their lives. It, you know, they really are hitting on a lot of modern things that kind of define our reality. So it's incredibly relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it really does hit home. No one wants to be on there and say, what did they say about me? Oh my gosh. You know, Shelby was like, well, they've hit me and dragged me through the mud 100 times, but Jordan isn't accustomed to that. She's not expecting that. And it's bad for Jordan's career. For Shelby, it'll just, you know, up her publicity. But for
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, she needs to keep that professional situation going. And, you know, I think it is very interesting. She finds herself in a situation, let's say, maybe not in this episode, but in upcoming episodes, where she's even neglecting her health in a sense. You
Hmm.
know, seems like the strong, one of the strongest characters there, but you know, inevitably her health seems to be failing her sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it makes you worry about her, even despite the fact that she's very, very successful and seems to know how to make things work in difficult situations.
Absolutely. And I also love the fact that she stood up for Shelby, you know, when they were trying to say like she wasn't good for the show, we got to get rid of her. And then she
Mm-hmm.
went to go see Shelby and she's like, oh, well, it was, you know, it was great. Well, she's like, no, I'm not getting rid of you. We got to change your attitude. We got to change, you know, the way you go about things. And I really like that because like I said at the beginning, like those other shows, they never really liked Shelby, and now they're all, you know, understanding the character and they're growing with her. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and you know, you stand by your friends, and that I enjoyed that.
Absolutely. And I also love that she saw, I would say, the best parts of her. Like she sees Shelby past the facade because she's been her friends
Mm-hmm.
for years. And I love the line when she tells her, we don't want Real Housewives Shelby. I need debate team Shelby.
Yeah.
I said, okay, there you go. And sure enough, when she came back with a vengeance and it was
Mm-hmm.
great. So,
Mm-hmm. And then she ended up being like the highest rated person on the show. I was
mhm,
like, okay, you see, I like that, you know. And again, that's why I say I love it so much because they gave Shelby a lot to do. Right in the movies, she had her little parts here and there, but in the series, like they gave her a lot, and she killed it.
mhm,
She killed it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought was really good with uh, with Merch and the school
Mm-hmm.
that he put together.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really wonderful because I know some people who do that, but they've come up with these charter schools that serve, you know, that serve our communities, and they do it, you know, in an amazing way. So I thought it was good that they highlighted that about him, um,
Mm-hmm.
eventually where he went. And Lance still trying to seek some purpose. Did you see that fail of a cologne commercial?
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
Ooh, it was so bad.
That was hilarious. That was funny.
It
And we
was.
get to meet his son in there too, where his son is, you know, he's trying to teach his son to play football, and that gets deeper as it goes on. But I like to see that, you know, I like to see that the kids are grown up, and it was just,
Hmm.
I enjoyed all of those aspects.
I agree. I enjoyed it too, and from what they said in the story, that Merch, I believe they are getting an award for
Mm-hmm.
how fantastic their school, the Educator of the Year or something
Hmm. The
to
Black
that.
Educator of the Year or something like that. Yeah.
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 And so, you know, they're extremely successful in what they do. And, you know, it is amazing to see that everybody is, has a very interesting background and career position. Certainly, I think many of them are where they want to be. You know, you mentioned, I think it's Harper. I think it's, no, not Harper. Harper's wife's, Santa Lathan's character, seems to still kind of be figuring out things a little bit.
Robin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she obviously is someone who has a lot of talent, and you know, she's still trying to find her space, her the space that she's comfortable in. So you know, and you'd mentioned earlier how she is in a position where she wasn't happy, or could have been happier where she was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is very interesting to see that development with her as well, because things look fine between her and Harper, don't they?
Yep. They do. And when
Hmm.
you look behind the stage, it's not really, right? Because I think this is the episode where she actually tells him that she wants to move to where they were. I can't remember where they went on vacation, but she tells him he wants to move and he's like, "Well, no, we're going to get this house and this brownstone and we're going to," and
Hmm.
she's like, "That's not what she wants, you know?" And he pretty much starts from there to kind of ignore her feelings and just, wants to do what he thinks is right, and I think that's where the downfall in their relationship starts. So,
Mhm.
I would have to agree because
hmm
it wasn't like he's like, okay, well, maybe let's sit down and think of a plan. It's like, okay, well, we can't do it right now, but maybe we should like talk about it and
hmm
brainstorm together on what to do. But with Harper, and we'll get in that one episode where all the rails came off. People spoke the truth. Harper is thinking about what Harper wants to do,
hmm
and you can't help but see the disappointment on her face, and you know that things are not as rosy
as it
as
should be. Hmm
exactly as they yeah, as they should be. So on to episode 4, Lance making a comeback.
Oh, that was funny. Lance thought he said, "Yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to play football again." I was like, "Boy, okay." I actually thought they were gonna have him play good, but he got hit and he was like, "I'm done."
He's like, did they used to hit like that in 2013? But
I
in the
mean,
beginning, they were just dragging him like, how old is he?
hmm
don't drink
hmm
the Kool-Aid. Some of the comments were that they're looking for him at the retirement home. It was everything from soup to nuts. And ironically, it kind of got sparred by this conversation he had with another on-air associate from the NFL or something like that.
Stephen A. Smith.
Stephen
Man,
A.
that was
Smith.
funny. That was hilarious.
And he
Yeah.
says snarky remarks like professional football and basketball, you're known for your, that snarky remark if you can do it. And usually they're very smooth. The delivery is very cool and timed so well. I think Lance would have actually said something very snarky to him, in addition to saying, "Well, you never played, so you don't know," or something. Like
hmm
it would have been kind of very bouncy because he's so smooth in the way he delivers this character. But going back to football was the last thing I thought he was going to do, and I think that he. It was something he did impulsively, and maybe
hmm
in a sense he was doing it because maybe it had something to do with his son. Maybe he felt this would entice his son to want to have that type of notoriety and stardom by the son seeing him sort of more in the spotlight right now. Lance didn't seem to have a decrease in attention, but now he's all eyes are on him. Everybody's talking about him, and I think he's hoping this will encourage his son to pursue the sport. He feels that his son maybe is not as interested in football as he was. At least I get that impression, from the situation and how Lance is seeing things go for his son. So that was very interesting in that regard. Um, I felt bad for him when he had to go out on that field. That's all I'm going to say.
uh-huh.
Whoo.
And when he first got there, he did a nice little run, and he was telling the rookies like, "Oh, that's how you do it, rookie." And then when
Mhm.
he went again, and he got popped, it was like, okay, yeah, he was done right then and there, you know. And I agree with you. I think he's seen that his son, because he was trying to get his son to get into the football, right? Let's practice, let's do this, and you can see that the son was into other stuff, and then we get to find out more about the son later, right? But you
Mhm.
can see that. So I think when he decided to go back, it wasn't just the fact that he had the passion. He wanted to show his son, and like, you can have this passion too. You can be what I was in the NFL. So I think that's what motivated him as well. But you can't beat father time.
No, not at all. And he found out the hard way.
Yep.
uh, but yeah, at least it seems like at least when they've kind of put him in like in a coaching
Mm-hmm.
position, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
that actually worked out really good when he was telling the young guys, like, look, you want longevity in the NFL? He's like, this is what you need to do. So I like
Absolutely.
that kind of mentor role that he had with them. And what about Quentin's dad?
Oh. I don't know. He was just shady. I could tell Quentin's dad was up to something. You know what I mean? It
You know,
just
yeah, and the actor who plays his father is absolutely wonderful in this. I could see this gentleman kind of controlling Quentin a lot, even though Quentin is a grown man, a
hmm
mature grown man, but he's still kind of under the heel, under the thumb of his father's, or at least it feels that way, that that's what's going on. But Quentin is approached. It's after this everything that's gone on economically has hit a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
they've been approached with what might be $1 billion deal. This could be a big deal for the company, and his father is just absolutely nothing. I would never consider doing this. But Quentin is kind of looking at it in the long run, and I think it's also, if certainly the father owns the company, maybe the majority, and he wants to hold on to it, and I get that, and I respect that. There's nothing wrong with holding on to the business, but I think Quentin's approach too is the same as Harper, where he's like, we have to make as much as we can so that the future generations are going to have. He says, you talked about generational wealth. He says that to his
Mm-hmm.
father in
hmm
the episode. And the father's like, you have no idea, son, what it took to build this up, to buy property, in the last century in New York, what I had to go through. And so you realize that his father has something else invested in this, his pride in this business, that once you sell it, for him, it's more than the money. It's much more than the money. This is a symbol of what he's accomplished, where a lot of people have tried and failed, and you realize it. And I think he gets his point across. And of course, Quentin is at a point where he can't say, no, dad, you're wrong at this point. He can't. He realizes the value of the business is not just a
Mm-hmm.
dollar amount for his father, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when he tells him, oh, sorry, go ahead, Anzo. I don't know, interrupt you.
Oh no, no. I was just gonna say, isn't if I'm not mistaken, it's the episode where they go to the house and they find out he has Alzheimer's or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was messed up too, and it made a lot of sense because the father was like, hiding it, so he was trying to be who he was, like, trying to not give them any clues of what was going on with him. And then
Mm-hmm.
when they get to the house and they see that he's not really in his right mind, yeah, well, you could see Quentin was hurt, and
He was
they did
so
everything.
hurt.
Yeah, yeah, it was good.
And I do just want to mention that it's a lot of times it'll be somebody who works. It was the secretary, right?
Yes.
Anzo and
Yeah.
Lorraine, the
Mm-hmm.
secretary who said, I have to tell you something, Quentin. Just one
hmm
moment. You need to sit down. I'm going to tell she, because she knows everything. She
Yeah.
knows
Yeah.
everything.
hmm
And she's like, I have to tell you what's going on. And it's a lot of times it'll be somebody like her who's probably worked with his father for 50 years, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
not
hmm
spring chicken here. She's worked with him for 50 years, and she's aware of what's going on. And so, thank goodness that she kind of ran into him. I don't know if she had called Quentin on the phone, whether Quentin would have believed her. In other
I don't.
words,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they needed that face-to-face contact for Quentin to be convinced to do sort of like a
Mm-hmm.
site visit or whatever. But I thought it was very important to show that he is confronting his father on purpose to give him that portfolio for the sale. But
hmm
he needed to have that contact with her for her to be able to say that. I don't think she could pick up the phone and just say that. So it is interesting to see these encounters, and we've the three of us have talked about this. You need to see certain encounters between people that make sense. She's not going to send him a
hmm
text message. A text message would
Absolutely.
not have done it, right? This is not going to work.
hmm
Text message is going to work and say, well, there's something wrong with that. Well, thank you very much, delete. It doesn't have the
hmm
same effect. We need to see situations where we see actual encounters, real life encounters between people. For something
Mm-hmm.
that's serious, you're going to speak to the person in person, face to face. You need to have that kind of interaction. And we see that a lot. We see a lot of those interactions that you would expect here in this series time and time again. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why the flow makes so much sense. That's why these situations, begin, have a middle, and end in a certain way, because that's the natural esoteric way of how people communicate with each other. And we haven't been getting a lot of that in other series. You know, it's you
Yeah.
can't just put up a poster and say that's what's happened. It doesn't work. It has to be done a certain way so that we can see
Mm-hmm.
this flow and it feels like it's a natural thing. It felt
Hmm.
very natural how things worked out up to this point, let's say, even if we had stopped here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not always easy to do, especially when you have episodes eight
Right.
episodes with a lot of stuff going on and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of characters to tell us about them. So I have to say
Exactly.
it's so impressive, especially up to this point, where that happens with the father.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it's like you said, the father was hiding that, right? Because when they are having that conversation, you never get the idea that he's sick or anything like that. You know, he's just strong willed. He doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to sign the papers, doesn't want to sell over the business. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like, 10 minutes later, they go to the house and you can see, like, he's not all there. So you're right. It was done in a way where it wasn't forced. It felt like it was natural, you know? Like, that's exactly how it would happen. You would leave the house mad because your father didn't want to do the papers, then someone says, hey, listen, you need to hear this, and then you go and sneak back into the house and find out the way it's that it made so much sense the way they did that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Especially when the secretary tells Quentin, that big fancy car. I thought it was funny. She couldn't remember the name of it.
Mhm.
That big fancy car, he left it out, in the rain. He said,
Yeah.
the Aston Martin, he loves that car more than me.
Yeah, right.
That's when it really, really hit. Like there is something seriously wrong
Absolutely.
with my dad. I just thought that was just a great point of writing where it was hilarious, but at the same time drove home the point that all is not right, and he needs to check in with what's going on, what's going on with his
Uh,
dad. So let's move on to the New Year's
Oh,
episode.
wait, there was one thing I wanted to talk about
Oh
this
no,
one
go right
though.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing. It was the Candace part, right? When Candace was she starts you like after she had the drugs on, she started using drugs to find alternative ways to treat her kids, right? And then she meets that old man that says she's gonna help her. I knew that dude was gonna be a piece of garbage, man. There was just something about it. I was like, yeah, something's not right with this guy.
You, dude, you're so right. And the reason that I knew that it wasn't was because when she was just like, can you help me out? I'm like, no, anybody who's ever done any kind of dissertation knows nobody's gonna cross another professor by saying, hey, I'm gonna take your student on. I'm like, nah,
Right.
that's not gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
But there was,
Mm-hmm.
even if you didn't have that background, Anjo, I agree. You would have been like, what is up with this dude, and why is he all? She already has an advisor.
Yeah, it
Why
didn't
couldn't he
seem
have just
right.
like read it over, gave it back, and said, take it back up with your
Mm-hmm.
current advisor? I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say about that guy. I didn't like
Mhm.
him.
Yeah, he was creepy.
Yeah.
Oh, but yes, the New Year's party.
Mm.
The buffet at the New Year's party was quite interesting.
Oh yes.
Only take half the gummy. That's all I'm gonna say. Only take half.
Oh, that was hilarious. Nobody wanted to take it except for Quentin and Candace. They were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, let's try this stuff,"
Mhm.
and
Ooh, yeah, I
they
feel
were
it.
messed.
I feel it. I'm like, oh
They were messed up through the whole night.
my God.
It was funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was hilarious.
It
And that's what. Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
No, I was saying it wasn't.
No, I was just gonna say that's why I like this show so much because you had those serious moments, then you had some nice jokey moments fitting in there, and it didn't feel like any moment overshadowed or like okay, this is too much. You know, it was a
Hmm.
perfect amount of jokes, it was a perfect amount of seriousness. You know, and there's a lot of seriousness in this episode that we're gonna get to. So
A ton of seriousness because Lance's son has declared that he is non-binary, but he hasn't told his father. He's
Mm-hmm.
only told Jordan, who is his godmother. And apparently, she's just like, you need to talk to your dad. And he's just
Mm-hmm.
like, well, he's all about football and all of this. And of course, Jordan's trying to talk to Quentin since they're the godparents to basically, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to talk about this? Well, we definitely can't tell Merch. Merch can't keep a damn secret to save us. And they patch him in anyway. And
Uh-huh.
all of them are talking except for Lance. He's
Oh.
like, and by the way, I can't keep it serious. F all of y'all.
Oh yeah, the phone call, that was hilarious. That
Oh,
conversation they had. But even when Quentin found out, when he walks into the room and he sees it, and he's just like like he was
oh my
speechless.
God.
He was speechless. He was like,
See?
okay.
I didn't
Yeah,
have
it was an interesting party. There was a lot going on. And if I remember, the thing that was actually maybe the most disappointing was I can't remember Harper's wife's name. Is it Robin?
Robin,
yes,
yeah.
Robin.
Robin kind of in this position where she was not expecting to be alone at that moment. And I think it became the symbol of how she feels in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It was New Year's Eve, and that's a night you want to be with someone special. And, of course, we see the next day they're together, but it feels too much, too little, too late in a sense. She's really hurt that Harper isn't there. And even I'm wondering why Harper isn't there. I think that's very
Me
interesting.
too.
I wasn't expecting to feel that way. And Harper felt, very uh, away from everyone, almost
Mm-hmm.
as if he didn't want to have not just avoiding Robin, but the
Hmm.
whole crew. Maybe he was doing that because he knew he may be confronted with this offer with the movie and
That's
things.
just what I was gonna say. In addition to the movie, and not to cut you off, but I'm just gonna add to this to the discussion. You remember that restaurant space that
Mm-hmm.
Robin was looking at, that
Mm-hmm.
historical space, and you could just see all the dreams and everything in her head. Like, this is the perfect spot. She's telling Harper, well, we need to run on this, and you're going to talk to whoever. Okay, fine. And as she kept prompting him, because I forget who the guy was that she was talking to from the market, was like,
Yeah.
are you interested in this? Yeah, we're still interested in it. And her hope was all in that. And then she
Mm-hmm.
gets that text that it went to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that just completely, you could tell it just destroyed her.
Absolutely. And even when Harper's doing the explanation, he's like, well, you wanted to do this and that didn't work. You wanted to do this and that didn't work. It's like you trying to like blame her for your mistake. No, she wanted that. You do what you can do to make your wife happy, right? And he definitely dropped the ball on that. And right then and there, I was like, yeah, okay. They're not gonna last. I didn't think they were gonna last.
No, it wasn't like, hey, somebody outbid us or something like that. It was just you just didn't try. You just
Hmm.
didn't do that. And I just so when she said, no, I'm not okay. And you gotta hand it to Lance. He's like, yeah, he's my boy. Just telling him,
Hmm.
no, don't give up on him. But as
Yeah.
soon as she goes, he texts him, do what you need to do to get back here to your
Facts.
wife.
Yeah, absolutely. And we already know that, like, even though they're friends, Lance and Harper still have that little, their little confrontation because of what happened in the past, right?
Hmm.
You can tell that it's not 100% forgiven. Even when they were talking about the movie, at one part he was like, "No, we're not going to relive this part," and then the next time he changed his mind, right? But you can see that like some of that stuff still really bothers him, and the fact that he was like, listen, you need to come and get your wife. I thought Harper was going to be on the next plane right then and there and it was going to show up like right. And I was like, all right, this guy didn't even show up. Wow.
Like, oh man.
Yeah, it was hard to watch that. And Jordan was also there kind of alone, but this idea of Demetrius coming back into her life, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Mhm.
she's not. She doesn't trust him. There's this gut feeling for her. And I think we all knew it was a matter of time before she went and checked his credentials, so to speak, just to find out a little bit more about his background. And, he wants to kind of shower her with gifts. And Jordan doesn't really need any of that shit. She doesn't need
Mhm.
any of it. This is not what she's looking for. Jordan, if she wanted to meet a man with money, she could have done that already. I think we all know that money is not that important to Jordan. She's a little bit more ethical than
Mhm.
she puts out. And, when she found out, I think she did find out before, the party from Shelby. Shelby helped her with a little background check about the
Mhm.
fact in making investments that she feels are unforgivable. And
Mhm.
I think she made a good point. He didn't really defend himself. He kind of said something. I don't know whether this is the exact same episode, but he says that, oh, well, a lot of people in their 401ks or, their IRAs are, I'm sorry, but mine does not have any prison investments. I don't know.
None that I'm
Mm.
aware of.
I don't
You
think it's,
know?
Is
you
there a
know,
private prison ETF that I wasn't making
got a great
aware
investment
of?
for you. Well, what is it? Is it oil or no? It's a prison. Oh, yeah, I
Mhm.
might pass on that one. I don't think a lot of investors are proud of that or really, and I'm not dogging anybody. If that's what you do, that's okay. But the way he made it sound was like everybody has it, and it's just not true.
Very
Um,
nonchalant.
and he could have said, you know what, you're right. I invest in that, and that's how I made my money. But I'm going to try and make things better. He had a lot of outs, but in the end, he kind of was a little resentful towards her when he's hurt her before. He didn't
Mhm.
apologize, right, Lorena? Right, Anzo? He didn't say,
No.
I really messed up the last time, and I shouldn't have treated you that way. We had seen something where he wants to change. He wants to be a better man. She calls him out. He tries to be a better man again. That's one thing, but I didn't see that with him. I think he's very proud of himself, and he feels that he could control her a little bit. Um, so when she did kind of invite him and confront him and have that confrontation, maybe it was later on, but I kind of felt like, she was getting played again. And it was not a good feeling to
Mhm.
realize that for Jordan, since she was so scared of that happening to her once more.
Absolutely. I agree.
Okay, so on to An American Marriage. Now, this episode, I believe, started out with Harper and Robin on opposite ends of the couch. Welcome to couples counseling.
Mhm.
And that was a tough scene to it was tough but a realistic scene to watch, considering how in the beginning of the season they seem perfectly happy, but
Mhm.
in this episode they seem even further apart than ever.
Absolutely. And the fact that they decided, we're going to go to counseling and we're going to try and work this out because Harper's already disappointed her so many times, like up until this point, right? So the fact that she was even willing to be like, you know what, let's go to counseling and see if we can fix this shows how
Mhm.
much she really loved Harper and, wanted to make sure that her marriage was fixed. But you get a lot of information in there, and she admits to some wrongdoing too, but you find out more that Harper is kind of selfish and doesn't really listen and like care about the things that she wants to do in her life.
Mhm.
So
It was strange to hear how Harper thought there was nothing wrong with being absent, so to speak. And, it is true that there are jobs that pull you away from your family. I get that. There's a lot of people in the military, they cannot be with their families. They want to be, but they can't. And you get into a relationship with someone like that, knowing that you may
Mhm.
not be able to spend as much time with them. I get that. You marry someone in the health professions. Sometimes those guys have to work on the holidays and weekends. You deal
Mhm.
with it. This is not, we're adults, we're not shocked by this. But he's a writer and he can write from anywhere.
Exactly.
mhm.
So he could close the door and be like, I'm working, like and but still be sort of in the vicinity of his family. And so, in his mind, I think, and we kind of discussed, we touched on this, but, to anybody from the outside, it doesn't look right. And he can't really see that. Even like maybe even to the end of this series, I still don't think he was able to grasp onto that. But there was another reason I think why he wasn't able to, which the three of us know. But it is hard to watch Robin, pretty much saying, well, he's not around, or this. That's the huge thing, and usually a sign, that things aren't going too well if your spouse isn't really around.
Hmm.
It's heartbreaking a little because I think she's a good woman. I don't, I'm not blaming him or her, but it is heartbreaking to see the breakdown.
Absolutely. And even from like the first two movies, she's always had it in the back of her mind that Harper always had a thing for Jordan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even till now, like she still thinks that way because they had this thing in college or whatever. And, so she's always been, worried about that. Now it's New Year's and she's watching everybody couple up and everybody's doing their thing and Harper's not there. So,
Mm-mm.
yeah, absolutely.
Ugh, that was just tough. That was just tough. And then this just whole episode, excuse me, you just see just how much things are kind of starting to fall apart. They seem to get fixed, I would say, a little bit when when Robin decides, something that she had to do that was the same evening, I
Hmm.
believe, as the movie
The
premiere. And
premiere,
she
yeah.
had said, well, why don't I go to the premiere? And I think there was like a short meet and greet after. And she said, and then I'll go to my thing. And Harper's like, you do that? She's like, yeah, we just compromise. And when that happened, and then Harper showed up at her
Mhm,
event, I'm like, okay, maybe
mhm.
things are finally starting to, work out.
Yep. And I was like, that was great. I like that, That's exactly what Harper should have did. I was like, yeah, man, why? Like, go be with your woman, Help her because she's being honored. So you need to go there and support her just the way she has supported you. But then she tells him, oh, don't worry, go with your friends and do what you have to do. And then he doesn't come home.
Mm-mm.
It might have been too much of a temptation to give him. It was I'm not going to say she was giving him a hall pass, but it might have been too much of a temptation to tell him to leave at that moment after their discussion at the counseling session. She
Hmm.
wasn't telling him the truth. She wanted him to stay, but I guess she felt that she would once again, that she said, I don't want to nag him. No, you tell him to stay right by your side. If
Hmm.
this is the man you want to be with, you don't tell your man to go off at a very important night for both of them, and they're not together again. Inevitably,
Absolutely.
it was not okay, for her to kind of say, yeah, you just go and run off. It wasn't an ordinary night. If it was just like a night where they were hanging out playing poker or something, fine. But
Right.
this was what, one of two of the biggest nights for both of them. So I have to kind of call her out a little bit on that. If it was my man, he's staying by my side that night,
Mhm.
guys.
And I agree, and I have to call him out because she would have said go, and I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I am here with you. Those guys, I'll see them another time. I'm not going anywhere. There she wouldn't have been able to say it twice. No, no, go ahead. I was like, no,
They
I'm
would have
not going anywhere.
and they would have had that nice after the thing discussion. It's like, you were great tonight. So were you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Why don't we get some wine and talk about it? And it would have been a nice
Absolutely.
hot night. She
Mm-hmm.
missed out on that heightened moment, and in a night where you have those emotions that are running high and you want to celebrate on that. So that's also, unfortunate, but something to think
Hmm.
Yeah, that guy missed out.
about.
Uh,
Yep.
and also, what about Merch when he was just like, I'm not going to the premiere?
Hmm.
And Harper's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, no, I'm not going to the premiere. And Merch just pretty much lays it out. He's like, you are one of the most selfish people I have ever
Hmm.
known. So do you think I want to see myself and relive that humiliating moment of my life, kind of like over,
Hmm.
and over again? And I guess Quentin tried to like smooth it over, but he's just like, no, he really is just like hurt
Hmm.
and doesn't want to relive that moment. And Harper just didn't seem to quite understand that.
Hmm. And he also, I remember they seen the trailer and he did not like the way he was portrayed. They had him playing
Mm-mm.
like a real goofy, and that's when he started doing the training. Like he's like, okay, everybody's making fun of me, and stuff like this, and they don't take me seriously. So he went to the gym and started. He found his passion
Yep.
and he started fighting. So.
I
He sure
mean, it's
did.
very interesting this dynamic that both of you are talking about because he's the one who snagged the stripper. When
Hmm.
you really look at it, the beautiful,
Candy.
hot, sexy, like
Hmm.
snag this girl who's like, like he snagged that chick when all the
Hmm.
guys were probably trying to get those girls and none of them could, and he managed to do that. That shows he certainly does have the charm, and he's a man and he knows what he's doing. I just think it's interesting that really bothered him. And I think he really almost had to say something about it. Not only was it not entirely accurate the way he was portrayed, but you
Hmm.
can just imagine what we saw was in the version of the movie, but whatever they actually did, let's say if this was a real life circumstance, is 100 times worse, of him
Hmm.
like kind of tripping and falling all the time and, just kind of at this girl's beck and call. And
Uh-huh.
Shelby's kind of just laughing it off because she's like, well, it wouldn't be a movie if I wasn't in it. And I'm thinking to myself,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We're just like, yeah, she's right about that, actually.
yeah, but it's
Hmm.
very funny because even she wouldn't have any sympathy towards him about this because
Mm-mm.
she kind of was at the root of this issue. But
Hmm.
I think that it does say something to show what happens, and things like this do happen where, I'm sure that both of you, I know it's happened to me, where something like that happens and you feel very disrespected, and I think it's good that they put that in there. There was no solution to this.
Yeah.
Absolutely none whatsoever. The story wouldn't have worked if that character wasn't there to balance all of this out. And so it felt like it was at his own expense. But something, I think in the end, he's the one who has the last laugh. As I said, he got this stripper. I mean, I hope, let's say hypothetically in the movie, he would show that he got her and people would be like, wow, how did he get this woman? Like, wow, he really does have something. And Shelby's like, I missed out on such a great guy, kind of
Hmm.
situation. But it didn't matter. I think that it brought him back to that moment. Maybe the writing and the movie were so good that it could bring him back to that moment. And that level of promise in a show you're watching can make you feel uncomfortable. But I'd like to think if it was a real life situation, he'd deal with it for a few minutes and then go on with his day. What do you
Yeah.
guys think?
I think I don't know how he would react if he. I think he probably wouldn't have liked it. I think he would have really because even when he's talking to Harper, he was like, "You were the writer, or you were, co-writer, or whatever, and you could have wrote it the way it should have been, and not have me had to be the laughing stock of the
Mm-hmm.
movie." But it was just a trailer, so we don't know how it ended. Maybe it ends with him, he getting the girl, like you said, and all happy ending, and he didn't give it a chance to at least see how it ended or how his character progressed. So he kind of jumped the gun with it too. I agree.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think his feelings were just so raw, seeing like this caricature of himself on screen, and just it was just a straw that broke the camel's back, I would say.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think, which would make complete sense considering, what we've seen, kind of like how now his how his friends like are with him,
Hmm.
and every time they see Shelby, everybody remembers exactly what he was like, panting after, doing
Hmm.
everything like that. But he's at a point in his life where now he's a husband, he's a father, he's a respected educator, and that caricature is no longer funny, and
Yeah.
it's hurtful to look at in a medium that people who don't even know him, millions of people who don't even know him, would would see.
And
I agree.
and the very interesting part about this, and I want to hear both of your opinions on this, is when he finds himself, and it may not be the same episode, but when he finds that his students are seeing how incredibly athletic he is and what a good fighter he is. He's
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, he has a very good body. I put it out there. I said it. We didn't see it before. Now it's like, wow, this is an older man. This is, certainly,
Hmm.
he's not 20 years old. This is an older man, men we're seeing fighting, and he's very fit. He looks good. So the kids, the boys in the school was like, oh my God, did you see? Oh my. I think
Hmm.
his reaction to it was very interesting
Yeah.
because he was like, "You guys can't idolize me for this. You can't." He couldn't have his students do that. He had to shut it down. It was
Hmm.
really interesting. He's amazing, and I think even when he got that recognition for that, which it was pretty impressive, he
Mm-hmm.
knew like I can't have that kind of behavior. I think it was interesting to place and show the type of man that he is and the example he wants to set for those boys.
Absolutely, 100%. And the funny thing about it, even though he was like that, trying to set the example with those boys, he still kind of was like, hey, like I got to do more of this. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was like, they like it. You know what I mean? So deep down, it gave him confidence as well. At the same time, he's like, no, no, this is not what you guys need to do. But it also gave him the confidence to be like, yeah, I can do this. So it was a good 50-50 with the two of them. I
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Because the kids weren't laughing. They were just like, whoa. I mean, they were like, look at this dude. They were just into until they found out,
Hmm.
it's like, what are y'all into? And oh, it's me. Oh, okay. All right.
Right.
Well, you get this phone after school. He's in the office looking at it. And
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I
And
was like,
the part, oh yeah, because Robin is there. The part where Robin and Lance had that argument about the son, I was like, ooh, Lance went off on her, man. And I think I can kind of understand because everybody knew except him, right? That his son was non-binary, and
mm-hmm,
that's kind of the same thing what happened with Harper in the first one with the book. It's like the book came out and all of a sudden, oh, you slept with my wife
mm-hmm,
now, right? So now it's like everybody knows something and he didn't. And the anger that he had, I was like, yeah, it felt real. It
mm-hmm,
felt like something like he would do that for his
Yeah, and it
character.
is interesting because, of course, as you both know, and many people who are watching in the chat or wherever you're watching from know that the story is about this very tight knit group of people who have close relationships and sometimes date one another after somebody breaks up. You go ahead and date somebody, and this stuff happens. Like it is the
Hmm.
truth. You
mm-hmm,
wouldn't go, you broke up with somebody, and if you're going to have to trust anybody to be with, it might be one of the friends in the circle that you're going to trust. You're not going to go to some stranger. So, it does happen. It's, I think what happens is, they're lonely and they want to be with somebody and they're going to go to a friend they trust. Why not someone in the circle, in that close group of friends? So it's perfectly natural what's happened. And, I think that is also very interesting. What I do think though is seeing the growth from then to now, which is what we are seeing,
mm-hmm.
and the realization of perhaps some of the members who didn't get what they wanted or not fulfilled in the relationship finally getting that fulfillment now.
Absolutely. Oh, and the last of that episode with Quentin having the heart attack.
Oh my God.
Hmm.
That I did not expect for things to go that way. And you just the panic that you hear in Shelby's voice
Yeah. Yeah.
about it. I was like, oh my God, if Quentin dies, I'm a riot. Oh, riot, shoot.
I was like, yeah, they're not gonna kill Quentin. Like, no, we already lost Maya. Now they're gonna kill Quentin. No, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
can't do that. And it seemed like that's the way they were gonna go because his relationship with Shelby was so good, right? Everything was great. They were having a great relationship. They
Too
were in love,
good,
and then it was like, oh, something's gonna fall apart. So, but I'm glad they didn't do that.
Me too. Oh God.
Yeah, I'm glad the next scene you saw, it's like she's cuddled up in the hospital bed with him.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you see
Absolutely.
later on in the episode where she's doing stuff like, well, here's cauliflower for
Yeah.
you instead. They say
Hmm.
it tastes like chicken.
Hmm.
And she like threw his cigars out. Um, He couldn't drink any alcohol. So she was being extra vigilant. Of course, we know because she doesn't want to lose him.
Absolutely.
She made
Absolutely.
she tells him, I made a no flour, no fat, no cheese mac and cheese.
Jeez,
Yeah. Right.
I'm thinking, how is that possible?
And then they're getting intimate, and she's on top of him, and she's counting. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, gotta get up. And he's like, "What the?" You
What are
know?
you doing?
Yeah, yeah. You could tell he was struggling with it, but you could also tell that like she really did not want to lose him, and she was absolutely petrified when that happened to him. And it changed her, and I really like that. I really liked the dynamic that those two had.
Hmm.
I
Let's
think
see.
I think it
Oh,
was
go
right
ahead.
about at this episode, Alonso and Raina, that I didn't want this series to end, and I started to get
Me too.
somewhat emotional at certain parts of it. I'm even getting emotional about it now. I didn't want this series to end. I don't know whether it was because, well, obviously it's fantastic,
Hmm.
Hmm.
but I started to realize, a lot of what we're seeing, it felt very real. It didn't feel like fictitious characters anymore. And this ensemble, from working together for so long, has such a great chemistry working together, and they really do kind of pull together. I think, especially from 7 to 8. Lorena, you mentioned 7 was your one of your favorite episodes with
Hmm.
everything that's happened. But right about here, I just was thinking, gee, there's only one more episode after 7. I'm like, uh-oh, what am I going to do? I really want this story to continue. And
Hmm.
yeah, I really became even more attached to and more invested in the story, ironically, at this point.
Absolutely.
Hmm. This is the episode where TJ went missing.
Hmm.
Um, Harper and Robin were officially,
Getting divorced.
filing for the divorce, and Robin saying that she's up and moving, moving to Ghana. Uh, Quentin's just had it with Shelby, just not hardly letting him be able to do, hardly able to do anything.
Hmm.
Just so much was going on. But at the crux of all of this, a young man is missing, and they fear that he's possibly dead.
Yep. And that's when Quentin realized it didn't matter who his son was or that he was binary. All he wanted to find was his son. And that's
Hmm.
what any father would do. So I was like, yeah, man, it makes sense because I can understand the anger that he had. I want my son to carry on my legacy, go into
Exactly.
football, and he was through the whole when he found out, no, you're not wearing this, you're not doing that, you know, what's wrong with him. He was asking those kind of questions. But the minute that his son went missing, all of that went out the window, and all he cared about was finding his son. And he realized what was the most important part of that relationship was his son. You know what I mean? Not what his son was, but who his son is to him. So
Hmm.
I loved it.
And they also kind of showed some frustration with the pronouns, which we've all felt. Like everybody on Earth has felt this, um,
Hmm.
and Lance is no exception. And I think
Mm-hmm.
inevitably that we realized, or at least from what the story or the show was able to demonstrate, that became not as important in this particular case, and perhaps overall didn't really matter. I think that also. LJ, his name is LJ. LJ grew up a little
Okay.
bit,
LJ.
he had to grow up a little bit and kind of
Mm-hmm.
come to a situation where he was going to decide what he's doing. I mean, he hadn't really told his father very much about where he is or what he's thinking, and he's still making decisions. And and that's okay to be at the point where he is in his life. He's incredibly talented,
Hmm.
seems to be able to do a lot. Sometimes a lot of, it's not always the case, but a lot of these athletes can pretty much do anything. They're alpha males, and they can pretty much do anything under the sun, whether it's business or sports. They're multi-talented, and so you only see a fraction of what they're capable of. And it's probably the case with his son LJ. So who knows what he'll do with his life, but it is difficult for Lance to figure out how or what his son is going to do with his life. I think he wants his son to be happy, and
Mhm.
he really had that fear that something could have happened to his son. And they touch on the idea of the possibility of suicide and things of that nature. And even I started to think, he's not going to do anything, is he? And I really thought to myself, I just hope this isn't what happens in the story. So I was happy that that's not what happened. He went to the church. He went to the church, everybody, and prayed on it. That's what he did. He went to the church and prayed. He talked about how important the church was in his life, how his father brought him to the church, and how, God's love, uh, God loves everyone. And I think we've all heard those words from family before. Even when he comes
Mhm.
back, the reunion, when he comes back and he apologizes and everybody says, no, it's okay. It's okay. We love you. We're happy you're back. And it felt like almost, the whole family coming together in a moment that was very stressful, but also something that might have been needed at this time for everyone.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Something bigger than everyone's individual little problems. That I won't say
Mm.
little, but to say the fact that LJ was missing and now that he was back, that was the relief that everyone felt. And the adults probably felt kind of a little ashamed of themselves for the way that they had been acting,
Mm-hmm.
throughout this whole thing, especially through this whole episode, just talking to each other like they'd never been friends in their life with some of the things that they'd been saying.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And even the part where they're looking for him and Robin and Lance are in the car and Lance is pretty much like, he's sorry for the way he spoke to her and stuff like that. So I think that showed his growth, right? Again, another character who was
Hmm.
set in his ways, but now when something happens, you can see him change and how he's growing as a person. Like you said, the part where they were doing the pronouns and he says him, and then he's like, I'm sorry, I mean they, so he was trying to get better, and I really liked that.
Hmm.
You mentioned how he had spoken to Robin, and of course there was somewhat of an explosive moment. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's the moment where Robin comes in and is upset about custody. And of course, this is where we learn, or at least we learned a few episodes earlier that she planned on moving, but she had full custody up to this point. And
Hmm.
so, the idea that now she has to have this battle going on,
Oh.
and it might have been, something that she wasn't prepared to do or didn't expect from Harper. But I can understand Harper's position. Gee, that's kind of far away. It's maybe an 18-hour flight just to say hello. But inevitably, it did cause a lot of tension, in a sense, and it was something that wasn't easily rectified, in a sense, at least from what I could see. um, it took a little bit of soul searching, if you will, to figure out how this was going to play out between the two of them. So there was that as well.
Absolutely.
So to kind of wrap things up with episode 8, um, I think the thing that sticks out most for me in this episode was when Harper had to say goodbye to his little girl.
Mm-hmm.
That, and you hear the Gladys Knight song.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that was just heartbreaking. She didn't want to let him go. He didn't want to let her go, and he's still trying to plea bargain at the last minute. He's just like, "Please don't go. Please just don't leave."
Mm-hmm. I was at the point where I was like, okay, so she's doing what she's doing. Like you said, you can write from anywhere. Maybe you should go. Maybe you should go to Ghana. You know what I mean? If that's the case, you should go because right now everything is being taken away from you in your life. Your wife is leaving. She's taking your daughter with you. What left do you have here other than your friends? What's more
Hmm.
important, them or your family? So I was like, man, you know, and it's Santa Lathan. Like, what are you doing? Go,
And
bro.
his boys pretty much say the same thing. Do what you have to do to stay in
Mm-hmm.
your daughter's life. And he was just like, no, I'm not moving. I'm not moving to Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and of course, we suddenly realize that there is some kind of a spark between Jordan and Harper, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something that maybe was never fully, finalized, I guess. And I'm not. I think Jordan has been very stoic through a lot of this, and men are showing an interest in her. So it's not like she's sort of like a wallflower or anything. Like they're coming up, they're approaching her. She certainly isn't a person who would be lonely at night because there's someone who's interested. It's just that she was maybe perhaps hoping on something too. And however, she's very careful to tell Harper that it's not, she's, he's not going to be able to kind of just date her right now. Some
Hmm.
time has to pass before, they could know whether it was right or wrong. And I thought that was very interesting as well, because you do see where people kind of, jump the gun, so to speak, or go so quickly into relationships. And, she didn't want that. She says, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing that. We have to be careful about this and let's see where it goes. And so we don't know, even after he wins this coveted Pulitzer Prize that he's wanted to.
Hmm.
And I really like the topic. It's a love story set in post reconstruction, or yeah, the post reconstruction era. I said
Hmm.
that is a great story. Like
Yeah.
that sounds great. When can someone please write this book so I can so I can see it, so there is that. And I think that interest, these ideas, we're always looking for new ideas and things. This story just constantly seems to produce them in an enjoyable way. A lot of the music in this series was a throwback, of course. I Just Got Laid and It's Friday Night was the opening song, or the trailer, or whatever it was, maybe the opening song.
Oh, yeah.
So we're all
Mm-hmm.
like, just got laid, like everybody's jamming to that. I think that the music selections in this were perfect. Lorena, you mentioned Gladys Knight in one of the episodes, or the previous episode. There was a
Hmm.
lot to pick and choose from that was just enjoyable and, quite well placed. I think they even had a soloist who was singing at a nightclub, and, it was kind of something you might see in New York, or in a big city
Hmm.
at a place with someone with just a guitar and singing, kind of Tracy Chapman style, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
So that was also very good too. I think it was great. Overall, kind of seeing how things came to a close, but also not fully closed. And I don't really want to believe that this is the final chapters.
Me neither. Me neither. I really don't want to believe it either. Maybe they can do a movie, one more movie or something like that. Because I have a feeling that, yeah, Robin and Harper are gonna absolutely end up together. I think that's been their connection has been hinted throughout the movies and now the series, right? So I think that we can find out what's going on with Robin and what she's doing. I definitely want to see more. And I think this last episode, I think, gave me one of the funniest moments when they're all in the house arguing, and Harper says something to Shelby. She says, "What did you say to me? You're gonna let him say that?" And he was like, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth."
I said, oh, they went there.
Yeah, me too.
I was on the floor in
Yeah,
tears.
me too. Me too.
It
Me
just shows
too.
how
Oh,
relevant they want to keep the show to stuff that
Hmm.
is happening, at present day. And I think it does show that they value a lot of the things that are affecting us right now, from the pandemic to things like
Absolutely.
that last event, and more. It really was, just so much fun to watch things that we can certainly relate to, just like that comment. So it's so craftfully done. The production was also beautiful. The costuming for everybody in here was fantastic. The locations were
yes.
great.
Hmm.
I really think that they should get an Emmy or something. I don't know what they would
I hope so.
qualify
It
for.
would be it would be an Emmy, and they would so deserve it. I mean,
Hmm.
considering how big of a ratings bonanza this show has been for Peacock, I would be the only way that I would accept that there wouldn't be a second season right away is if the writer said, you know what, we need to sit down and figure out exactly how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to bring this back, because they did such a stellar job that this could stand alone on its own
Mm-hmm.
for quite a while before we got another season, or like say another another movie. This is just, it's just been a joy to just sit and, you know, and just watch and just enjoy it. Because kind of like you were saying, Anjo, where it's just like people say, you know, oh well, where's your original content, original
Mm-hmm.
characters? This is one of them, and this wasn't just like some one-off movie that no one had ever heard of. It was a
Absolutely.
very popular popular film. So
Absolutely. And they portray us in a positive light. You know what I mean? Even though you had little hints like Harper and Robin, and then you had the hint of like, Robin and the guy at the market there, that there was kind of connection that something could happen, but they
mhm.
never stepped out of the relationship. You know what I mean? Even though Harper almost did it, he still never stepped out at that moment. And I pretty much enjoyed that. I like, yeah, at least they didn't cross that line there and showed that each character still has respect and loves their wife or their
Mhm.
significant other. I really like that part. And Lance gets a happy ending at a happy ending as well.
Yes, because
Hmm.
girlfriend from the Caribbean, turns out her and her husband were no more, and she moved to New York, and
Hmm.
Lance was more than happy to see
Yeah,
that, because
exactly.
the kids are like,
Yeah. Kids were happy too because they wanted to see their father happy.
mm-hmm,
And he has that little press conference where he's standing there with his son and he's talking about his son. I was like, yeah, man, the way they ended it was really good. And I was like, you guys, I was like, I want to see more. I didn't want it 10. I'm like, it's only 8 episodes.
I
Come
know.
on.
That's all we get, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So hopefully, I am hoping, especially considering the ratings, that we get another season
Me
of
too.
this show in the near future. Folks, if you haven't seen The Best Man, the final chapters, it is streaming now on Peacock. I think it's $4.99 a month, to stream through Peacock. But even if you just get it for the month, this show is more than worth it. You
Facts.
definitely want to check that out. So first of all, I want to thank the both of you for coming on to talk about this show, because I'm just so glad, had so much fun, was so thoroughly entertained. It was like seeing crazy old friends again,
Mhm.
and hardly that much time has passed, but it was just enjoyable to sit down and watch. And again, to see Black people portrayed in a positive light with enough entertainment and appeal, regardless of who you are. There's stuff that you're
Um,
just going to laugh at regardless.
Absolutely. One disappointment, they didn't do a dance number. You know, they should have did a dance number. I would have
Oh,
loved to have seen them do a dance number. That would have been fire.
that would have been amazing. Ah,
Yeah.
man, so would have loved that. Oh, well, folks, we are going to wrap this up. But before we do, get some folks time to shout out your channels. So, you want to go first? Let people know where they can find you.
Yes, everybody, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Positive Fandom. So do check me out there, like and subscribe to Positive Fandom. I've got a lot on my channel, a number of different things, but mainly reviews, watch parties, things of that nature. So please do check it out. And of course, you can find me on the Burr Network on Mondays and on Fridays. On Monday, I do a show with Lorena called Ladies of the PGS at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Fridays, I I do a show with Robert Meyer Burnett called Midnight Musings. You can also find me on Lorraine's channel for her Toxic Male Appreciation show on her Twitch channel on Thursdays at 5 p.m., but also various watch parties as well, including something like this. And you can also find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network for Uncivilized Scoundrels. Lorraine and Anzo, it's such a pleasure to be here tonight to review this spectacular series. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, my dear. And Anzo, please do let the audience know where they can find you and what you have going on.
Absolutely. My channel is Biggaford Entertainment. Tomorrow night will be the OOC. Usually we talk about real life events. So if you can check that out. Fridays, we usually do some sort of tournament that always ends up being crazy where something wins that should never win. It's really funny. It's, if you guys want to have a good time, check that out. I'm just happy that you invited me on to talk about this show. I've been planning on doing something on it and I just never did. And when you were like, yo, you want to talk about it? I was like, absolutely. So thank you for the invite, and it was a pleasure streaming with both of you tonight.
Oh, thank you for coming on. And yeah, an absolute pleasure. So I'm glad you could join us. Folks, if you're watching the replay, please make sure that you do first subscribe to my panel guests here. And second, make sure you hit that like button. And folks, we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.